Police officers are very important members in society, tasked with the role of keeping us safe and ensuring peace and order. However, ironically, these law enforcers are sometimes the ones breaking the law, from sexually harassing women, recklessly shooting an innocent man in his own home, tasing a man to death, to preying on minor girls. The following officers have been caught on the other end of the law, and they learned their fate in court. Daniel Holtzclaw is a former law enforcement officer of the Oklahoma Police Department who was convicted of multiple counts of sexual assault, sexual battery, and other sex-related offenses.
Inside the car.
She got inside.
Did you go get in the car and talk, or did you stand there with the door open and talk to her?
I think I did get inside the car for like a quick minute and just see what's the deal. It's just talking to her.
Did your pants come unzipped, unbuttoned, anything while you were standing right there? I don't know what to say. I mean, because it just looks like I just taught you a lie, and now I don't know what to believe.
Nothing was done as far as that.
According to reports, Holtzclaw would sexually harass African American women who had active warrants or who had been in trouble with the law before, because he knew they would be afraid to report him. Additionally, he would actively seek out ladies from low-income neighborhoods. Once he had identified his victim, he would harass them sexually and make them do things against their will. He had done this to 8 different women until June 18th, the fateful day on which he made a mistake that would ultimately cost him both his career and his freedom.
I'm sticking with my story.
Okay. On the video, are we going to see her?
Shouldn't see her. I didn't see her.
Good. Are we going to see her pull her pants down?
I didn't see her pull her pants down.
Are we going to see your out?
No.
Are we going to see your go in her mouth?
No.
On that day, Daniel would make a traffic stop while driving his police-issued car back to his house, but he did not notify the stop to police dispatch as his custom. He quickly ran the driver's information before shutting down his computer. A 57-year-old lady called Jamie Liggins was the one driving the car. Jamie came from a low-income neighborhood. She had no past criminal record though, and so she was not scared to report him for forcing her to do something she did not want. This involved making her not just undress, but also perform an intimate act on him. Jamie was terrified the entire time of the horrifying incident, and she would later claim that she even begged him to spare her life. The day after that, Daniel was brought in to be questioned at the same station he worked at. During the interrogation that lasted 2 hours, Daniel denied everything that Jamie had claimed he did.
Made her lift up her shirt, and when she lifted up her shirt, she exposed her breast. What about pants?
Nothing in her pants as far as I can see. She was wearing tight jeans.
She said she pulled them down. Do you recall putting your in her mouth?
I don't.
He said that Jamie had seemed nervous and was even crying when he pulled her over after noticing her car swerve. He also mentioned that she couldn't present him with a legitimate driver's license. Daniel clarified that he requested Jamie to exit the car so he could give her a pat search.
And you thought it would do what?
Made feel like she's not the only one.
Even when faced with the possibility of video evidence, Daniel insisted on his innocence. The DNA that was taken from him matched the evidence in Jamie's car.
CSI is processing your car right now. And when we stepped out, they found some pubic hairs.
Daniel was eventually found guilty of lewd exhibition.
There were 2 full days where the cigarette hearing was going on and my lawyer wasn't allowed to be there. Let them know about it. Also, the lead prosecutor in my trial, who lied, gets to weigh in on a response or has input. How is this any way safe or fair to me?
This is when it seemed to hit him.
Procuring lewd exhibition. Defendant is guilty of the crime of procuring lewd exhibition, guilty of the crime of forcible oral sodomy, guilty of the crime of procuring lewd exhibition, guilty of the crime of forcible.
Daniel, visibly upset, cried hysterically as the judge read the remainder of the verdict.
Mr. Holtzclaw, this jury finds you guilty of the various counts.
He was sentenced to 263 years behind bars. Daniel is 37 years old now, and he remains behind bars. Interestingly, he still says he's innocent. While Daniel remains very insistent on his innocence, Eric DeValkenaere, whose brutal cold murder of an innocent black man was proven beyond any reasonable doubt, cannot say the same. Eric DeValkenaere is a former police detective from Kansas City, Missouri. The officer was charged with shooting the murder of Cameron Lamb, an unarmed black man. The incident occurred at Cameron's home. According to reports, he and his partner, Troy Schwalm, broke into Cameron's house without a warrant or the homeowner's consent. This move seemed to have no clear purpose, as they were not there to arrest Cameron or anything of that sort. Notably, while Cameron did own a gun, it was found on the garage floor and not on him. Troy added that he noticed Cameron's hands on the steering wheel of his car before the shooting. Put differently, Cameron wasn't waving a gun or posing a threat to officers. Cameron was backing carefully into his garage when the two officers charged through the yard, and DeValkenaere fired 4 shots into Cameron Lamb's truck, killing him. Eric was charged with involuntary manslaughter.
Family members of George Floyd, Jacob Blake, and Oscar Grant are in town for the trial.
We're not asking, we're demanding. We come in from all over the country. We're not going to stand still and let this continue to happen to us over and over again.
In the end, a judge, not a jury, will decide DeValkenaere's fate.
The trial was a very emotional affair, especially when Troy Schwalm took to the stand to talk about the events that occurred leading up to Cameron's death.
Do you believe that Eric DeValkenaere saved your life on December 3rd, 2019? There are tissues behind you.
Yes.
The prosecutor had harsh words regarding Eric's actions that led up to Cameron's death.
And responsible police officers protect our citizens in their own homes. Careless and irresponsible police officers shoot citizens in their own homes.
Even though Sergeant Schwalm claimed that Eric shot Cameron in order to save his life, it is not clear why Eric had to, since there was no apparent threat. Cameron wasn't doing anything wrong, and he was in his own home.
He has no warrant. He has no probable cause. No information about any crime other than a traffic offense.
According to the defense, Eric and Troy had pursued Cameron because of his careless driving, which exceeded 90 miles per hour. Additionally, he had 2 children in the back of his car, which according to them made this even more dangerous. While it was true that Cameron had been driving fast at some point, in the end, he decided to stop the chase and head back home. According to the prosecution, Eric had planted the gun on the garage floor to give the impression that he had a legitimate purpose for shooting Cameron. Eric denied this. He described in tears what he said transpired before Cameron died. He could hardly speak.
Takes his left hand with the gun, and as he brings it along up and around the left-hand side of the steering wheel is when my focus moves from that weapon to the center of his chest.
And still, no information about a crime.
The prosecutor grilled him about entering the home without a warrant.
No weapon of any kind that were in your mind that you knew about. No information like that at the time. You are now entering private property without a warrant, without probable cause, with your gun drawn. True?
As all officers in my situation would have done.
However, the defense attempted to portray Eric as a hero who saved Troy's life by doing what he had to do.
Have time to get a warrant.
No, I did not.
Did you have a duty to protect your partner?
Yes, I did.
And do you believe that you ultimately saved his life?
Yes, I do.
The prosecutor pointed out that Eric took too little time before making the decision that would ultimately claim the life of an innocent man.
Seconds from the time you start to encounter this individual without a probable cause, without a warrant, without knowing what crime, before you pull the trigger. 9 seconds.
Before he presents the weapon in a threatening manner, correct?
Yes, 9 seconds.
Yes.
In the end, the judge ruled that Eric and Sergeant Schwalm had violated the law by entering the property in the first place, and that they were not acting in self-defense, and that they had unnecessarily exacerbated the situation.
Defendant followed Sergeant Schwalm into the backyard of 4154 College and engaged Cameron Lamb, ultimately shooting and killing him. He did so without considering or being aware of the substantial and unjustifiable risks associated with his conduct, including, but not limited to, the fact that Sergeant Schwalm and he were unlawfully on the property, that they were both escalating a situation that previously had de-escalated, and that their actions created or exacerbated the risk.
At this point, Eric already knew that things were not looking good for him. Watch this reaction as the official verdict was read aloud.
Slaughter in the first degree, the court finds the defendant guilty of the lesser included offense of involuntary manslaughter in the second degree, a Class E felony. As to count 2, the unclassified felony of armed criminal action, the court finds the defendant guilty.
Though he seemed to be blinking quickly, Eric maintained a straight expression as he realized his fate. But after the hearing ended, he was seen looking at his attorney and muttering something. then sinking his head in desperation in the background. There seems to be cheering emanating from outside the courtroom, which is probably a reaction to the decision. Eric was sentenced to a term of 6 years behind bars. Eric may be getting out after he serves his sentence. However, Marcus Eberhert, who tased a man to death, will never be a free man. Marcus Eberhert was a former sergeant from Atlanta. On the day whose events would eventually land him in jail, one of the other officers that were with them attempted to arrest Gregory Towns, whose partner had called the police following a domestic dispute. However, the suspect fled into the woods before the officer could arrest him, but he was able to catch up to him and successfully place him in handcuffs. As he was trying to stand, Gregory staggered and finally fell to the ground. He claimed he was too exhausted when he was asked to stand up again. At that moment, Marcus advised Howard to tase the suspect if he refused to get up. Gregory tried to stand up again, but when he hit the floor, Howard and Marcus gave him a tase. It must have been at this point that Marcus and Howard realized that the situation was more serious than they thought, prompting them to call an ambulance. By the time the ambulance arrived, Gregory's heart had already stopped beating and he was pronounced dead. Marcus was charged with murder while Howard was charged with involuntary manslaughter.
East Point police officers will head to prison. A Fulton County judge handing down the sentences for former Sergeant Marcus Eberhert and former Corporal Howard Weems after a jury found them guilty in the 2014 tasing death of Gregory Towns.
Howard was sentenced to only 18 months in prison, whereas Marcus was given a life sentence. Gregory Towns' girlfriend, Azel Smith, stated that after the sentence, looking back, she wished she had never called the police that day and that having them come was just a disaster.
I don't want to hear anything he has to say. I just really don't want to hear anything he has to say. Gregory's not here to respond for himself, so I did it for him.
Reports say that Gregory was tased a total of 13 times, the toll on his body being simply too great. Eberhart's actions were surely brutal, but if they shock you, then wait till you hear the even more bizarre actions of Jayleen Fleer.
Have you ever shared any images of your penis with anyone?
Yeah.
This is Jayleen Fleer. The investigation into this former police officer was sparked by an anonymous tip by Crime Stoppers.
So you understand that you're not under arrest and you are not being detained. You understand that you're free to leave at any time. There will not be any locked doors keeping you from leaving. As you notice, that one doesn't have a door lock behind you. So we're looking into some allegations that were made. It started with a Crime Stopper report, so we're just kind of going from there. We're investigating allegations that were made that you were communicating with a younger female on Snapchat and potentially some material might have been shared. Okay. Some photos, some images, stuff like that.
According to reports, Fleer would send messages on Snapchat to young girls, requesting that they meet for sex and then offering to pay them to do so. One of the girls was just 12 years old. More shockingly, Fleer offered the girl huge amounts of money if they could get their even younger friends to agree to his predatory acts. In court, the prosecutor read Fleer's explicit messages to the children. Her shock at the officer's actions were written all over her face.
Detail he goes into with regard to his sex exploits that he is trying to engage in with young children are just despicable. Tells multiple 12-year-old girls, do you have any younger friends who are interested in older men? I'll give you money to hook me up with them. The younger they are, the better. He had asked her about soliciting younger friends, and she mentioned a 9-year-old friend. The defendant got excited about that prospect and tried to convince her to talk her 9-year-old friend into having a threesome with him.
Fleer's defense asked for a lenient sentence.
Mr. Fleer and his wife were expecting the birth of their first child. The child was going to come any day. And Mr. Fleer, without hesitation, said, I'm ready to surrender.
But the judge was not having any of it.
I have never seen a more despicable set of facts as I've seen in this case.
Eventually, Fleer was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Which of these cases was the most shocking to you? Tell us in the comments.